Yeah.
Leftover, untouched
We're shooting
leftovers.
today, right? All right, everybody, welcome to Beyond the Letter. Today is a very, very special. Did you finish it with me?
I tried to do it.
That was cute.
Don't give him validation, bro. You don't need all that.
That was awkward.
That was awkward.
I had to like pause and be
You're
like,
like,
I'm
echo.
sorry.
He's like, did you just try to make
I'm
this a
sorry.
thing right now?
Beyond the Letter.
I'm sorry.
He's just excited
Like,
to
I
be
don't
here
even do
today.
this with my wife.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Welcome to BTL, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are celebrating something special. It is 2-year anniversary, 104 episodes, 52 weeks at a time.
Wow.
2 years.
Woo!
So last year, our 1 year, which we never thought would happen, what the podcast did, we celebrated big last year, which was great. It was appropriate. It was amazing 1 year. And here, second year, it was just like, okay, now you just more in a rhythm now.
Yeah.
First year, we never thought we'd make it, or we thought, and we'll get to it in a minute. But here we are at our 2-year anniversary episode. So I thought who we would be great to bring in and on today is kind of the original team who has launched Beyond the Letter. Some are on the table a lot of times. Others are really working hard behind the scenes. So we still got those individuals in here. We got Andy in here. We got Javi in here. We have Alex in here. We got Gabriel cutting cameras. But at the table, we have Jermaine and Nancy and Alize. And so what I just thought would be cool is just for this cool episode, for those that are probably part of the Beyond the Letter family, just hitting some reflections over the past couple of years, going back and revisiting a little bit about the inception about this podcast. We had talked about it many times in other episodes, but we have a lot of people who are kind of new. I meet people all the time who are like, I just started listening to the podcast. At our church, people are coming up to me all the time, and they're like, I first listened to the podcast, and that's what got me to the church. And so they may not know kind of some of that early time. Like for Alize, it was like her second week on staff
like
or
my
something like that.
second week. So the
Tell
way
the
I
story.
found out about Beyond the Letter, and I was just reflecting with Nancy, is last night I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, like where was I when Beyond the Letter started? I was still a volunteer. I remember Nancy and I talked by the entrance to the sanctuary, and she's like, hey, so we're starting something new. Pastor Adam's thinking about starting a podcast, and like we kind of want you in on it. Like you've been on part of the team, And so and eventually I started getting hired before we even launched the podcast. And I was just in here one day, and Pastor Adam, you're kind of like assigning roles, and you're like, yeah, so you could take photos for the podcast. And 2 years later, here I am, still take photos for the podcast. Nothing's changed.
You're a
Just
producer
another
now.
Thursday.
Yeah, you leveled up from
Leveled
photographer
up.
to producer.
Got promoted.
Walking in and
Yeah.
out when I want.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Well, you do all the social media post scheduling, right?
Oh, yeah, that's a hefty. I don't think people understand the back end that goes into that. With Andy, I mean, having him on the team now, it's incredible because if you look at the content calendar, you'd probably get a headache because there's just so much that goes into it, and it's so much strategy that goes into it too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's huge. I don't think people really get the scope of how much work that takes.
Yeah, it's
So we're
7
probably
clips
like
a week.
we're okay. So we're posting 7 clips a week.
One every day,
One every
3
day.
platforms. So minimum of 3 posts every single day.
Yeah. So 3 posts every single day.
TikTok,
and so,
short, and IG.
Yeah. So it's almost 30 videos a week are being scheduled, post, captions created, hashtags
Graphics.
created, songs attached. Because nowadays with like the inception of TikTok, it's like songs have to be picked attached with it, background noise,
Cover, picture.
Yeah, picture cover. And so, you're still managing a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
And scheduling it and setting it. And Andy here edits. So Andy's not only in here, today he's doing photos and he's like, sometimes he's cutting the cameras, but then he goes back. Alex cuts the show.
Yeah.
So Alex goes back. Sometimes I may say something that I'm not comfortable with. And so I'll text Alex and be like, hey, after that show, if you could just cut out, this statement I made, I don't know that everyone's going to receive it well or whatever. So Alex goes in, he rewatches the show, cuts all, camera angles are being live cut, but then he cleans it up, he tweaks it.
Yeah.
And then Alex gets it back to Andy. Andy goes through it, cuts all the videos, makes all the captions for it. AI helps with some of this stuff too. It helps, he's like helps a lot of it. But what's awesome too is and Jermaine knows this, is now that the show is growing, companies are actually starting to reach out to us, and a lot of them are international. And so we're getting hit up like we're about to bring someone on board that's contracted and very inexpensive, where they're going to start making all our thumbnails.
Yep.
And so. And they showed them to us, and we were like, so maybe by when this episode comes out, I don't know. I don't know when we're pressing play with the guy.
I was really
We've been working this week, and they're gonna, he's gonna get on board. He's ready.
Yeah. So what's crazy is like, we have our Beyond the Letter email, and I see some of it. The team has access to it, and I get this email on the Beyond the Letter email, and some emails I see, some emails I don't. And I see this one. He's like, hey, which if anyone ever wants to go into business. If you're trying to start something, not if you have something established, but if you're trying to start something, do the work for the company that you're trying to get a client as, because that may be the thing that hires you. So for instance, what this kid does, I don't know if he's a kid or what, but I'm assuming he is. He emails and he says, hey, I created some thumbnails from some recent episodes you did. And if you like them, I'd love to talk about coming on board.
Yeah.
And I look at them and I'm like, these are incredible thumbnails. They're so well done. He pulls them off YouTube. They're very thought out in terms of how he made it.
He didn't even have the raw files. He just Mickey Moused it. Wow.
So he gave me a bunch, and he doesn't know the quote unquote boss is the one who's seeing this email. Could be a whole play. Like any of you guys could have saw it.
We have access,
And you guys could be like, well, we're doing thumbnails already. Blah blah blah. But because I tap in and get involved. Sometimes I'm looking. I'm like, it's actually really good work, and I could tell he's international. So immediately I knew then probably the rate it's not like an American standard rate. So I just hey, how much to do? I text Jermaine right away. Hey, I want to respect Jermaine and his leadership. Hey, you like these? You know?
Right.
And if Jermaine was like, no, I hate them, then I'd be like, okay, I like them, but I don't want to force something on you, so we'll just keep doing what we're doing. Jermaine's like, no, these are fire. He's like, because I don't really know what's going on. Like you just said how many videos we're doing. I don't know how many videos we're doing. So I tell Jermaine, how many thumbnails would he have to create? A week. And Jermaine was like 3 or 4. So I tell email the guy back, how much for blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, I actually watch your show and I'm a big fan. So this is what I normally charge. But for you guys, this is what I would charge because I'm a fan of the show.
Wow.
And I was cool, great rate, And so we thumbs up it. So what's cool is as the show's been growing, talented people who have gotten a hold of the show or have seen the show, they've reached out. Like we're talking to someone else who cuts and edits videos, and their rate is inexpensive, and Andy's killing it doing other things. So we were just like, hey, we could probably offload some of those video clips. So we're talking to someone else and he went through our whole show and he gave us 4 clips.
Yeah.
He was like, if you like these, I could do them for you. And that is the best way you could business pitch for people.
Sure.
Is
already take work that you do, that you have.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, show ahead of time what you're proposing to get hired for, because that may be the thing that really that does get because we probably get 10 emails a week.
Oh yeah.
Someone pitching.
Oh, or DMs too.
Yeah.
Like, hey.
All the time.
Yeah. Hey, we'd like to do, and it's always, if you want to have a conversation, schedule us here or reach. And to me, I'm like, I don't even know if your stuff is good.
Yeah, that's the best. That's the best way.
But these guys, they're spending 4 hours to pitch something that now they're literally every month have a contract now.
Oh,
that,
for sure.
Is paying hundreds of dollars.
Right.
And so it's really cool that now what was early on for us, like, how are we going to do this? Who's going to do this? Now it's like people coming to us, saying I could do this. And I think the next level up we'll have is like really starting a rotation of genuine guests and stuff like that, because we get a lot of emails. Yeah. Like I've seen a few recent emails. Like there's some actors who want to come on the show and they're like in more like they do like Lifetime movies and stuff like that. So they're not like A-list actors in the sense of blockbusters, but they're on Hallmark or they're on Christian. They're like on Angel Studios and stuff. Yep. But we're getting emails now like, hey, this guy's coming out with a TV show. Would you guys like to interview him? And in the past we'd be like, well, I just didn't know. I wanted it to grow first,
right?
But now we're getting those emails like, oh man, that's pretty cool. We didn't really dream of that.
No,
it's crazy.
It's crazy. We were just like in a room talking about, hey, this is how we're going to plan it out. I had no idea. Like, this is what I love about like Pastor Adam. He'll take a chance on people that he's like, no, I see you have certain gifts and I feel like you can apply it. I've never done any podcast work or social media stuff. And it was just like, oh, now you're going to, do it. And now I'm handing off.
A show.
Yeah, now I'm like handing off the baton with Alize and Andy. And it's just really cool to see how much it's growing from inception. I mean, I think it's like really an honor to be able to see all of that growth and now just be able to see other people take a part of that and be a part of that as well. So it's been a fun journey, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
Yeah, and I remember that first meeting we grabbed everyone in a room. Everyone in this room was in there for the most part. Andy wasn't on the team yet. No. But what was cool was Jermaine, same thing that I respect his leadership. He obviously can't make a call unless he comes talk to me. Mm-hmm. So, there was a time where he showed me young Andy was still in high school. You're still in high school right now, right? No, you're not. You're in college because you're in part of our Patriot College. Nice. But Andy was still in high school, and you were editing videos for video game streamers, I think is what it was. Like vloggers. Okay, that's what it was. It was vloggers. Okay. And so Jermaine was like, hey, we got this kid in youth who edits for vloggers. And I'm not skeptical of young people. Like, I think young people are very gifted. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't like what, because Jermaine was basically pitching, like, how about, we bring on a young kid to help us with Beyond the Letter and stuff. And I wasn't like, no, I have a whole media team, blah, 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 blah. Why would I do that? Yeah. Why would I, Right. I was like, no, let me see his stuff. And then he showed me some stuff that he clipped for some streamers. And I can, since this is my background is marketing and media and stuff. So I can kind of see talent in that area. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, man, this is really cool. Yeah. How much will we pay for something like this? And Jermaine's like, well, he's in high school, so I think it's like $10 a video or $20 a video.
Well, it was the crazy thing is the YouTubers he edited for were huge.
Yeah.
There's 6 million subscribers.
What?
They're like, and they're treating him. They're paying him like he's in India. Like they're paying him $15 for a 15-minute video.
Yeah,
and it's a whole vlog, and he has to edit, cut, animate. I mean, he was just getting demolished. So I'm like,
and I saw it because that's why I saw it and I was like, oh, he's doing a lot of work on this.
Oh, what
are they paying for this 15-minute video? And I think you said $20 or $15.
Andy could tell you the exact. I don't remember. I just remember going, bro.
$20.
Yeah,
it was $20 for a fully edited 15-minute vlog.
That was really 3 hours of footage you had to cut down, and
15 minutes was like it started off at like $50 for like
a
20-minute video.
20 minutes was like
that takes a week or more.
Yeah. It took like a week or whatever. Yeah, because it's animated. It's like
every frame, like there's sequences. So like, and you could recognize. So I'm like, bro, this kid is. He's putting in the work.
Jermaine's like, this is how much it would cost, and my response was, give him one of our videos. I want to see what he could do. And then I said, and on top of that, we're going to pay him what he's worth. We're not going to treat him like he's 16.
Yeah, that was
if he comes on the team, like he gets paid what I would pay a 30-year-old producing this content.
Yeah.
We don't take advantage of someone's talent or youth or whatever, because that's where you get young people who just boom, peace out.
Yeah, toxic
they,
cultures.
Well, they just realize they've been getting gypped or squeezed, and then the moment they feel like their talent grows to a certain level, then they'll just dip, because they'll be like, well, they never looked out for me.
Because they come to know their worth and their value.
That was
exactly. So I just told Jermaine right away, find out how much a normal person would be paid for this that wasn't 16, and make sure we do that.
Yeah.
And so if we end up liking the stuff. And we did. We loved it. And so Andy ended up joining the team, and now he's actually on staff. Mm-hmm. For a while, it was just contract work for videos, but now Andy's on the team. Alize was the youngest team member at the time at 19.
Yeah.
But then Andy came on the team, I think, at 17. Mm-hmm. So he was the youngest, still is probably the youngest on the team, because you're 18 now or 19? 18 now. You're 18 now, so you're the youngest person on the team, but contracted at 16, on staff at 17.
A lot of the work,
I love it.
A lot of the work with mentoring, leading Andy is like, bro, you're making way more money than your peers. Like, we gotta make sure you can make good decisions. Like, like the average 17-year-old and what they make and whatever. So like, it's just crazy to see like all the evolution, and he has a great head on his shoulders. For sure. So. Really dope.
And now he's rocking out there. So it's just cool. Like the early team was Corey, who's Corey's still really like he's the back end heart of that started this with me and Caleb. Caleb was my original co-host is my brother, and then a year ago he stepped out of full-time ministry. But that first year was with Caleb. So it was me, Caleb. Caleb came up with the name Beyond the Letter, and then I just kind of branded it and marketed it at that point. But that was Caleb's original name, which I loved, and I caught it right away. Yeah. And he and I spent so many days and months talking about Beyond the Letter and what it could be. And then, we pressed play in I think it was September 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
And so we had started meeting in May or June of over 2 years ago, because we had an on-ramp plan, and it was like, we're going to build this set. We're all going to commit to at least 3 years, to doing this show. If 20 people for the first 2 years are listening to this thing, we're good. We don't look at the numbers. We don't and we had that meeting. We had a meeting that was like, if you feel like you don't want to be part of this project, because we weren't coming in at first everybody has to do this because you're on staff.
Right.
It was Gabriel, who's in children's ministry, Jeremiah, who's in children's ministry, Jermaine, who's in youth ministry. So this wasn't like our production team.
Yeah.
I actually didn't want to impose our production team. That's Josh. That's Alex. That's, Shelton. I didn't even pull them in because I was just like, if this doesn't go well, I don't want anyone, quote unquote, in that department going like, why are we doing this when we have so many other things to focus on? So I just kind of created a hodgepodge of people that I just knew kind of liked me. Yeah. And I'm like, they'll do this for me, because I think this is going to go somewhere, but it's a theory, and I don't want no one getting mad at me if it doesn't. I want people to be like, well, we love Adam. Like, he
Let's
tried,
give it a shot.
We're cool. He's rocked with us in other areas. Like, the other individuals, I just didn't want to put that much pressure on them, that they felt like that's part of their role, so they have to perform. Right. So we sat in a room, and it just laid out, this is what we want to do, this is what we hope to do.
Yeah.
If no one likes it or listens to it, minimum we're committing is 3 years at this thing. So we're doing 3 years of posts, 3 years of that, and we're like, if people hit it, don't like it, don't, whatever, like, that is what we're doing. And I don't know if you guys can remember, because I'm trying to think, I'll have to think, but at what point I felt like this was actually Beyond the Letter was like a thing. Yeah. I'm trying to think at one point.
Before that, we even had a follow-up meeting. I don't know if you remember, because we were still trying to learn the chemistry with everybody. Like, when do we chime in? When do we not?
It was super awkward.
That was a learning experience for us. And we had a post meeting one time, and it was like, I think Corey asked me directly, like, do you want to be in this? Because,
Corey hated cutting it.
Yeah, because he's like,
he would
you're
point
not
to you guys, and you'd be like,
yeah, and he's like, you got to go in, like, it's like a freeway, you got to merge, and once you miss it, as you guys are listening, like, topics move on so quickly, and if you try to reel it back, sometimes you can. Other times it's like, oh, we're on the 15th topic. It's gonna be kind of silly
your last
to
idea,
come back.
yes, your last idea,
and it's not gonna hit.
Yeah, and first time guests, that's always their feedback was, like, what just happened? It just like, they just feel, when you're in the moment, you just feel like the cars are passing fast. Like, when you're listening audibly, it sounds like a good roll of conversation.
Right.
But like, when you're like, what you're saying for you guys, when you're like in the room and you have a microphone, you're just like, the conversation just keep going.
And then you also have to be mindful if it's like a sensitive topic, or if it's somebody's truly sharing their heart, like Jermaine's on the verge of crying, I'm not gonna be like, well, remember this funny story, like, you know. So it's just like, it was a lot of learning with the chemistry with everybody, but now I feel like we've got the rhythm of it. So it was kind of like a wake-up call when Corey was like, do you want to do this? If you do, then you gotta, step up and like speak up, you know? So that was a conversation I'll never forget. But now it's like, now I'm like, okay, don't talk too much. Like, if we're on the side of the table.
Well, and what was really important for me, and we did an episode with, Jeff and Will and stuff like that, where we talked about like the strategy behind like, marketing the podcast. So anyone could go listen to that episode we talked about, which is probably maybe, eight episodes away or something like that. But the same regard for me, like what was really important for me, and then also for Caleb, was like, hey, most podcasts are very one-sided. They're very male. They're very female. Everybody at the table, it's like they're always preaching to the choir. They're, and then you look at the kind of top podcasts, and they're not that way, right? They have very differing opinions coming in. They have different lifestyles, ethnicities, cultures come in, and those are like the top ones. So it was just like, hey, if we want to have a podcast that really makes a big impact, we need to not mirror society, because society is very tribalistic.
Yeah.
And we need to actually mirror what some of these top podcasts are doing, in the sense of having diversity of thought, ethnicity, culture, all that kind of stuff like that, while also still being very Christian in our DNA, right? Yeah. And so that was like really important for us. So bringing Chelsea into the table, bringing Nancy into the table, bringing Alize into the table, who at the time was 18, and you're still young now, but you're 21 now, so, or you were 19 at the time.
I was 19,
and you're 21 now. So it's like you're very young at that time, and you just getting out of high school, and then also having other voices that were older and other races. And so we were making sure we wanted Black voices and Hispanic voices and white voices and all that. And so early on, when it was like the room was just like, well, it's the Adam and Caleb show. Like, we're all just here to support you guys. And it was just like, but that's not the podcast we want.
Yeah.
Which goes back to what you were saying with Corey, where he sits me aside and he's just like, you have women in there. Sometimes I see their face disagrees with what you guys are saying.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see they look confused, but they're not speaking up. So they represent not only women, but they represent
the audience.
An audience who isn't maybe as Christian as you guys, or as aware of certain topics as you guys. So Nancy would be like, I don't, in her head, she's thinking, I don't know what global economics is.
Right. Can you
but
guys
she's
explain
not saying
that?
anything, but she's not saying it. So Corey has a camera of you guys as he's editing.
Yeah.
He can see all cameras at once.
All the expressions.
So he would see all your guys' face changing, and he's like, why aren't they saying anything?
Yeah.
And then he sat with me and he was like, this is just my opinion. I think they should talk more.
Yeah.
But if you don't want them to, before I bring it, you should bring it up to them. I was like, I'm not going to bring it up to them, because they may think as their boss, I'm telling them they need to speak.
Right.
So I say, as a friend and a peer who's editing the show, you should tell them it comes off very awkward when you guys don't speak up, or when you don't blah, blah, blah. And so then that's what led to his meeting with you, because to us, it was important to have someone say, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Well, the way I see it, or do you really think that, to lean into some things. And then I think that second meeting, what you're saying, is really what led the framework of Beyond the Letter to become. It went from a theory to like, okay,
No,
this is what we're known for.
Yeah.
The type of conversations we're having. This is what we lean into, and so that's what really started giving its form. I'm also trying to think though, at what point we felt like this was really making an impact in people's lives, like a reach.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about, because, like, going out with you and you getting recognized just for being a pastor here is one thing, but I noticed a huge change where people are like, you do a podcast, and I'm like, oh shoot, and then I'm like on 1 every 10 episodes, I start getting recognized like at Starbucks or the Stater Brothers, and I'm like, what the heck? And it's just crazy to see like people, and a common response of mine is like, people actually watch this thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we were just like, you know what? Like, let's just do this thing and whatever. Like, we're not watching numbers. We're not going back and meeting. Why did we get only 200 views on that episode? We need to do better. Come on, y'all.
More viral stuff. More viral stuff.
Go hard. Go. We never did any of that. So it's just funny, because as it happened organically, and we found that organic way to have this podcast, that framework you just talked about, people really started to grab onto it and integrate it into their lives. And then, like, you catch people anywhere and they'll stop you and be like, yo, hey, I really like that podcast. I really like that episode. Or, hey, I'm right now, I'm like 60% done with the episode. I can't wait to see what happens with this conversation. I'm like, people are just in it, and that's really dope to see now.
Yeah, no, on Sundays, I'll have people, like, we missed, how we were gone for Beyond I Do for a little bit.
Yeah.
I had somebody come up to me and she was like, what's going on? Like, I watch you guys all the time. You guys are messing up my routine, you know?
Yeah.
And I've had multiple people tell me that. And it's just like, I think one for me that made it more like, wow, this is something was, and I've shared this story before in other episodes, was this coworker at Monster, not a Christian at all. She was just like, I started watching that podcast you sent me. And she's like, I really do like it. And I can see just a different perspective, even though I'm not a religious person. She was like, I even shared it. And this is where I was like, wow, she shared it with her boyfriend, who's like a hard rock metal like guitarist or something like that, and then with her family. And I was just like, this is reaching people that, you know, not on a typical, wouldn't come to a typical Sunday morning service, you know. And like, even though I've been on the more on the side part, there's still people that I feel like Alizé, like we each have, I feel like a niche or a certain group that you can relate to. That's why they're like, oh, I love when you ask your little side questions, or like, oh, it's nice to meet you. You know, Alizé has gotten that, I've gotten that, we've all gotten that. So it's really interesting because that's how you know, like, no, people are truly watching, because I don't always chime in the beginning or the end, so you have to watch the full
you gotta
episode.
really watch.
Or sometimes
it's a 2-hour
just
episode,
the
and it's, you know,
and I've had people be like, "Oh, I love hearing you. Why aren't you on the podcast? I never see you in front of the camera, but I hear your name," and I'm like, that's crazy. Because it's one thing to like sit at the table, people know your face.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll get stopped walking on the just here on the campus during the day on a Sunday, and people are like, I always hear your name on the podcast. And I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I think for me, the first time that I recognized that, I was like, oh my gosh, like
the impact.
I think we're you know, doing something right, was, I think it was, and I shared the story, but it's been over a year since I've shared the story, is we're probably 5 or 6 months into the podcast. Phil was with me, so that's how people could check and make sure it's not like a fake story, because it feels like it's a fake story. You know, we're like 6 months into the podcast, and he and I are at a grocery store like 25 minutes away. We're in like completely other cities, and we're in the grocery store, and we're just talking about, I don't know what we're talking about, but we're having to pick something up at the grocery store. And this lady just peeks over the aisle, because I think we're at like a Sprouts or something. So they have like the nut section. So it's not like a aisleway at Ralph's where it's 15 feet. It's like to your shoulder.
Okay.
And so the woman like peeks over it, and she was like, I know your voice. Are you on radio? and then I was like, honestly, because I thought nothing of our podcast at the time. So I'm just like, no, I'm not on radio.
Doing it in a closet.
You know?
Right.
And she's like, say something again. And I'm like, I don't know what, you know.
Speak.
I'm like, I don't know what to say. She's like, you're on radio. And I was like, I'm telling you right now, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not on radio. And she's like, you know what I mean? Not like radio, but like you're on, like you have a show or something. You're on, like I've listened to you on my phone.
Yeah.
You have, is it a podcast or something? And I was like, I have a Christian podcast called Beyond the Letter. And she was like, that's what it is. It's Beyond the Letter. I've listened to like 3 episodes. And immediately my mind goes to, oh, how long have you been going to our church?
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I say. I said, but she's like a white lady in her like 50s. Now, you know, our church is very multi-ethnic, but what our least amount is white. Yeah. So I kind of know all the white faces in our church. and so I'm like, you don't look familiar. You know, if you were any other ethnicity, I would just be like, oh, you probably go to our church. But in that moment, my immediate follow-up question was, how long have you been going to our church? And she goes, what church? And I was like, our church at the time, we were called Abundant Living Family Church. So I'm like, our church, Abundant Living Family Church. Yeah. And she was like, what your church? And I was like, the church I pastor at. And she's like, you're a pastor?
Yeah.
You know, and she was like, you're a pastor? And I was like, yeah, I'm a pastor. And she's like, where's your church? And I was like, in Rancho Cucamonga. And she was like, what? I didn't even know you were local. You know, like she just like, she was tripping out, and we talked for a few moments, and I invited her to church, and I never saw her again. So maybe she came or didn't, but she was a Christian, and she went to another church, and she had just said like a friend of a friend sent it to her, and she'd been enjoying it. And we were like 5 months into it. And when we walked away, Phil was like, hey, that was kind of crazy, huh? Yeah. And I was like,
because you guys weren't close to Rancho, were you?
We're about 25 minutes away. So to us, though, I mean, you know, our church is large, but you know, the podcast was so new, and it was just you just didn't assume it reached anyone like that, and especially, but when she said it, then my head just went to like, oh, you go to our church.
Right, because you must hear it in the announcements or
exactly,
our nights,
or you follow us on social media. And
you've seen,
and when she had like no connection to it, then I was like, oh, I think this might be a thing. Yeah. And then, you know, fast track to then probably 6 months ago, a year and a half later, then when I really noticed that it was like kind of catalytic, because at first I always thought it was making an impact, but then about 6 months ago I realized it was like it's pretty catalytic, was when I was in LA and someone next to me and which I've shared on the show before, and someone was watching our reels. And I was an hour away, and I was in a tattoo shop, and the tattoo artist was watching our Instagram, and I thought it was on his For You page, but then when I brought up to him, like, oh, you're watching my show, and he was like, he looked up, and we had a conversation, and it was Fuego and Tiffany's post that went viral, and so then I'm thinking, oh, what Alizé is doing is working, in the sense of like it hit his For You page, it's reaching people far from Jesus. And then for about 10 minutes, he goes onto our Instagram page and he starts scrolling, and he starts realizing he had, for the past 3 months, been sending his girlfriend our Beyond I Do content.
That's crazy.
And he then starts to share, like, my girlfriend just moved in. We're like already fighting and arguing. I didn't even connect the dots. I've been sending her your guys' stuff for 3 months. And he's like, because I don't know anyone who has a healthy relationship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this is the only advice we're getting for our relationship.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, oh, this thing's catalytic. Like, this is,
for sure.
and I love when I'm not, it's nice when I'm recognized, but I love when I'm not and it's making an impact.
Yeah.
Because then it shows like we're bringing on so many unique perspective and voices that they don't always know it's our show.
Yeah.
Because it's not always us getting kind of quote unquote the credit.
Right.
So those are two very formidable moments for me that I was just like, oh yeah, this is everything my dad had built a foundation and dreamed of in terms of reaching people far from Jesus and helping people close to Jesus.
Right.
Also just have a framework and friends that they can listen with, but even just meeting people who just, like your friend from Monster. Like that was my dad's dream, was to be so, and we did it in practice, but to be so, on the outskirts of faith, that people who are completely unchurched start to get reached. Like that was the foundation he has always wanted, and he built the stepping stones. Yeah, we just started putting some walls on it. Yeah, which is really dope.
Yeah, I mean, even the girl, she even ended up coming to our, I don't know if I shared, but Generosity Center. Because she was like, I just want to come and, and help out.
It's our food program.
Person who's not a Christian. Yeah, our food program. And she came out and she was like, man, I want to do this more often. And you just never know, like, what it can lead to. Whether it's our church, we're not like, come to ours. It's just like, wherever the Lord takes you, like, that's amazing.
And I have friends that they'll have like new membership, and part of it is they'll ask like, oh, how'd you come to faith? Or how'd you first, think about coming to church or whatever? And they'll be like, oh, I started listening to this podcast that I found on Instagram, and they're like, oh, what's it called? Beyond the Letter. And they're like, oh, that's my friend. And they'll call me and they'll be like, Adam, someone joined our church because of your podcast. It's crazy. And I'm like, dang, that's crazy. Like, that's wild.
And it was kind of not risky. It was risky in a lot of other ways, but like, realizing that the framework that you set for the podcast is so counterintuitive to how churches are actually doing podcasts, or like that churches are doing them in the first place. And so just, veering off that, the 3 C's of leadership, or the 3 C's of,
Pastor Adam, how do you deal with
interviewing you, right?
Based.
Yeah, very just straight Christian-y versus like Christians operating as people, and differing opinions within Christendom. Like I've seen this be like Christian podcasters' favorite podcast. Even they're not. I don't even think we have their communities. We just have them, the people leading those communities that are like, I love, like, that's my weekly watch. And it's really cool to see that, because in Christendom, that people are just like, whatever they're doing over there is like dope. You know, like that podcasting they're doing is really dope, and it's really different. It's really dope to see.
Yeah, and I'm always surprised at people who watch and listen, because even friends I have, they'll text me and be like, make great episode this Sunday. And to me, they're like, doing very substantial, incredible things, and I'll be like, "Oh, you watch?" Like,
you'll be like, "What did we talk about?"
You watched our podcast, and they're like, "Yeah, man, I watch it all the time. I enjoy it, or I listen to it all the time." And I'm always very humbled by that, because I'm just like, why? Like I get why, but I also am like, very flattered by that they would care to even take time and listen to it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I know we're sharing, but I would love to, like, if people that are listening, like, first of all, thank you for coming on this journey with us. You know, it's been 2 years, and now we have Beyond I Do as well. But also, if you guys share, like, stories that, you know, maybe your favorite episode or what has it impacted you, or how it's brought you closer, maybe with family or other
how you came
people.
across it.
Yeah, how you
know?
came across it. Yeah, just leave it in the comments. Go to our IG, you know, and I think it's just amazing because every time somebody comes here, a common thing that I hear everybody say is, oh, every time I listen to you guys, it's like I'm in the room. That's what we hear all the time. We just heard it from a guest. And I'm just like, wow, that's really awesome. So you guys are a part of this as much as we may be at the table, but you guys are at the table with us when you're in the car or in the shower, wherever you're listening.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, which is like so cool. Like our last episode, we had Pastor Abe Camacho from San Diego, and when he started launching off, like, oh man, I listened to the episode, and he like walked into this rhythm of the show right away. I had never heard, like, me and Abe had never talked about the show, so I didn't know he listened to it. So
really?
No, I just assume people don't, you know, like I'm not always like, oh yeah, I know you know me from my podcast, you know, like, and tons of pastors have podcasts. So it's like to assume someone's heard of you, listened to it, cared about it, you know, like it's pretty big headed. So it's like, so I just 90% of the time, I just assume like you may be aware that I'm doing a thing, but like, you don't know why we're doing what we're doing,
maybe
what it's called, what it's, you know. And so when he sat down, he's like, first of all, you know, guys, big fans, blah, blah. And then Abe starts briefing off like episodes and stuff we've talked. And he was like naming stuff that was like an hour and a half in of certain episodes. So I was like, oh, like he's actually listened, which was dope. Cause then he sits in the chair and he rolled into that traffic freeway and he was just giving meat and, you know, Sammy's been crushing it. And, you know, it's really special that I also want to give a shout out to Will because ever since Caleb stepped aside, and that's really cool. Just friends that step in is Will's a church planner. And so as he's trying to plant his church and stuff like that, when Caleb a year in decided to not be in full-time ministry anymore, it was important to me to have like another Christian thought leader that was pretty regular with me that I felt, you know, matched not Caleb's personality, but matched Caleb's ability to be pretty ambidextrous on topics. And
boldness,
Yes.
100%.
And by that time, Will had already been on twice. His first time he went viral, like crazy viral. It was his second post on Instagram. And
well, he actually created an Instagram because of the podcast.
Yeah,
you remember?
And I was pressuring him. I was like, bro, you're a church planner. You have to have an Instagram. And so he had one post with like his wife or family, and then the second post was Beyond the Letter, and it was our first post. I think we had one go semi-viral with Caleb once, but it was our first like genuine.
Million. This
was like millions, you know,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, dope. Wow, Will's a very great processor and thought leader, and then he went on another time, and then that did really well, and then you know Caleb stepped down, and then I was just called Will one day and was just like, hey man, I don't want to do this podcast alone. I don't want to feel like every week I'm drawing the thought for it. Even though our team's incredible, but you know, Will is a senior leader type of thought leader, so that matched Caleb's kind of ability to dig wells in certain areas, even though their personalities are completely different and even interests are completely different. But it was like, and one of the things I told him was like, I'm not trying to replace Caleb. Right. I'm just trying to continue the heart of Beyond the Letter. Right. And what Caleb brought, Caleb always brought, and always Will had brought. And I said, hey man, just think about giving me twice a month because I won't be so stressed because this show has become something now and I can't sunset it. I don't want to feel like this is all on me. Man, just give me twice a week. You can bail whenever you want. Just give me twice a month. And he went and talked to his wife and he was very honest early on. He was like, I'm church planners have no time for anything. So he was like, I'm church planning.
And he lives
I got
far
all my
from
kids.
us.
Yeah, he lives about 40 minutes away. And he went and talked to his wife, and his wife was like, man, I'm for it. You should do it. And he called me back and was like, I'll do it. And so just having him the past year has been massive, even though he's not on this episode. He was the last 2 recent ones, because like I said, he gives me 2 a month. And so he did the 2. We just filmed them over the past 2 weeks. So he'll be on in October, not in October, but he'll be in the mid-October. But just having Will a part of it.
Yeah.
Game changer.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
And his voice. And something me and Will talked about, which I think we should talk about on an episode, but was just, and I'm going to let him explain it and share it more, but it was this identity of, or this desire to, as an Asian person, make an impact that isn't tied to his ethnicity. Because a lot of times if you're a minority, it's always like, I was recently in a thing, and then they were like, hey, there's, on the call, we have Latino leaders, we have Asian leaders, and so let's just say there's 15 people on the call. Let's just say there's 4 Asians and 4 Latinos, and the rest are white people. And they're like, oh, on the call, we have Hispanic leaders, Asian leaders, and then we have some other church leaders. So it's like, if you're Asian, you're immediately an Asian leader. If you're Hispanic, you're immediately a Latino. But if you're white, you're just a leader. Like, that bothers us when we're on stuff. And they're like, oh, Adam Mesa, he's a Latino leader. I'm like, no, I'm a leader.
Yeah.
Right.
My church is multi-ethnic.
Right.
I don't
Yeah, it's
only lead
wild.
Latinos.
Hispanics,
White
right.
people don't only lead white people.
Right.
But Koreans, you're only supposed to lead Koreans.
Right.
And black people, you're only supposed to lead black people. And it's not really a box that anyone's trying to put. It's just a
Right.
subconscious way that we view, and it's silly. And only we catch it because we're the ones being kind of put into that category,
Labeled
right?
that, right.
And so me and Will have talked about this all the time, and we should one day on a podcast talk about. But what was really important for him was like, man, as people are seeing me on Beyond the Letter, they're not seeing me as a Korean. They're seeing me as just a genuine thought leader and
Yeah.
pastor. And it's
Yeah.
not tied to my ethnicity or my race,
Right.
which is like really is a big deal.
Right.
And because when you're in an American conversation, most of the time, if you're talking about multi-ethnic or minorities, you're really talking about first African Americans, secondary Hispanics, and then everyone else just kind of gets thrown
Right.
around, Indians, Asians, all that kind of stuff like that.
Right.
So like what was really big for Will was like, hey man, I get to be part of a team that isn't just connected to a label of going like, hey, we checked the box, we got an Asian guy, because he's
Yeah.
like, the team's so ethnically different.
Yeah.
I'm not even unique.
Right, right,
He's
right.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, because everybody's unique in an ethnicity, right?
Exactly.
And I think
that's
it's really,
wild.
for him, that was a big play to really be like that. Yeah, one of the reasons why I'm happy to give that time up is because it was a dream of his, not to be on Beyond the Letter, but to step out of this comfort zone that just labeled you into a specific stream.
Yeah.
And I mean, even though he's become one of my best friends. So in our
Yeah.
private group text, we make, Korean jokes and Mexican jokes and stuff. Jermaine's in some of those, but you still make your friend jokes,
For
but,
sure.
but in a culture way, you don't really always want to be labeled in
for
just
sure.
what your ethnicity is.
Yeah, exactly. So can you guys think about like maybe an episode? I mean, I know it's been 2 years, but one of your favorite episodes that we've had in the past. And if you're listening, you can drop that too, like your favorite episode that you've seen or heard, because some people just hear
Yeah.
it. But I'll just say I think it was I don't know if it was Mother's Day when we had Miss Pauline.
Yeah, my grandma.
Come on.
It was
Oh
Mother's
my
Day.
gosh.
Mother's Day
So
last year.
yeah. Man, if you haven't met her, she is just a bundle of joy. And I've literally asked, like, how do you have so much energy?
Yeah.
She's always
Yeah.
coming in with a great attitude. Like, and if we'll probably link it too, but just sharing her story with her marriage, with her husband, her faithfulness, and just the way she
Yeah.
is. I mean, I haven't spent a lot of personal time, but just the interactions
No,
that I've
she the
had
real
with
deal for
her,
sure.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to be like you when I grow up. I don't know how old she is, but I'm like, wow,
She's 80.
80. And she's like, and you
81,
might,
81 actually. I
yeah.
think.
And when I see her, she's always so put together.
Oh,
like
yeah,
the
she was
cutest
exuberant.
outfits.
Nathan, my brother Nathan
never
picks a
misses
lot
a
of her
fit.
outfits.
Stop.
Yeah, he
For
does a lot
real?
of her shopping. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what's up. That's
Wow.
fire.
Yeah.
Well,
every
it's
couple months, Nathan.
and every time
and her
she
go to
sees-
like Zara. And
That's hilarious. Every time she sees Valor, she gets on the floor with them.
Yes, yeah.
She's like, she's so
She's the best.
exuberant. She's
Oh, yeah.
she's a beast. Man.
So
Yeah.
that was one of my favorite ones when we had her on the episode. episode. It was just learning from
Yeah.
her, hearing her for
Yeah, having
longer
my
than just
grandma
10
on there was
minutes.
dope.
You know what was a fun journey? Because early on, like trying to, it's funny. The side quest was always like, okay, we don't want to produce viral moments, like, and let that be the goal.
Yeah, right.
But how could we make viral moments of the already content that's producing? Like, so we've never primed anyone before they get on
Yeah. Oh,
camera and be like,
and you guys never told me before, hey man, this topic is really making you go viral. You should talk about
let's
that.
lean on that
You know?
more. Let's
Yeah,
just stay in
never.
that vein. Because when we've gone viral, that you just think about that as an opportunity, but we never do that.
Right.
But the journey of like getting with Andy and just trying to cut these things together to like see what we can hit. I think Miss Pauline almost took off
She
from
had
the
a few
zeitgeist.
that
No,
were
she did
pretty
a couple
high up
times.
there,
She
like
did, right?
over
Oh, yeah.
500K for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And it
She-
was that
she had viral
specific
hits.
episode that Nancy's
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
She's wearing this green outfit, and I know
Yes.
because I'll see the covers, and I'm like, oh, that one's going
Yeah,
viral.
that one goes. That one goes crazy regularly. It still gets
100%.
It's
gets
still
traction.
getting.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It's just been a cool journey to see like how can you.
And I think she cried because one day she didn't. She doesn't really. She knows she's aware of social media. But she didn't know she has an Instagram, but she isn't aware. So I screen captured a bunch of comments from her thing, and it was just like a lot of women affirming what she said, like this is so good, or I wish I had a mother like this, or whatever. And I text her one day, and she was like, "I'm crying, thank you." She just had no idea that thousands of people were commenting
Right.
on what she
sure.
said.
Exactly. Oh, I love that you
which
did
was
that.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
that
trying
would
to
be
think
mine.
of man. There's
so many.
There's many.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I enjoy when I have some of like some heroes on, and I know the next season of the podcast is going to be kind of more of those. I hope to be more of those regular
Dave
interviews with
Gibbons,
bringing,
yeah.
but yeah, like Dave Gibbons or having Lee Do-Ming on with his son
that was a
Harrison.
good-
Like
that was a
that
really
was
good episode.
That was a really great one for me, and just hearing from both of their perspective. Brad Lomenick, having him talk, converse with us, and so some of those where I get to like talk with some heroes, people I really respect, and letting them be part of the podcast is really cool. So I've enjoyed those.
Yeah.
And then and there's one in particular I can't remember. If I sat down and went through the YouTube, I'd remember, but I remember when when I took the headphones off and we finished recording, I was like, oh, I didn't expect that to be as enjoyable as it was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a guest. It was just what we had talked about.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I really enjoyed that episode. But I'd have to sit and look through the
And look through
YouTube
the thumbnails.
and try to remember what one that was. Yeah.
And that's been the fun journey too, is like what we're producing or thinking we're making, and then what ends up actually going off.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
never
Like it's
never the
always
same.
So it's always
Yeah.
so cool because you're like, oh, the one clip, Andy's like, no, this is that one, and then it's just that other one that's
2000.
like, we're just like, what the heck? We didn't see that coming,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it just catches like, but that's the story of the podcast, like what we planned for it to be, but also the reach that it actually ended
Mm-hmm.
up taking, and the community it actually built. Like how integrated into people's life this whole thing has been is insane. Like even my sister-in-law and her husband, my brother-in-law, we have a great relationship. She'll just send me like a video of my brother-in-law, shout out to Juan, a video of him just watching the podcast on his bed.
Oh,
Like,
really?
Yeah.
on his phone, just chilling. And she'd be like, hey, this is what Juan's doing today. You know,
No
like,
way.
and it's just like, yeah, a lot of my family, a lot of my friends I grew up with, everyone's so like, it's integrated into their lives. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's weird, and it's weird in a cool
Yeah,
way, but
that's
you're
fun.
just like, it's, and it has brought a lot of great conversation to the table to what you said. Like, man, I really feel like I'm at the table. There's people that we run into. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so comfortable. It's just because I feel like I know you. They'd be
People
like,
just
yeah.
talk to you like they've known
Yeah,
you for
yeah.
years, and you're just
And
like,
you have to
oh,
come
this
to
is-
and be like,
pretty cool.
oh, yeah. But it's so cool
Yeah,
that happens. That's why I'm like, dude, the fact that people actually watch this thing is so cool.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's
Right.
just,
And on a broader level of that, like I've just been thinking about it because this is our home, like this is what we do every Thursday. Thursdays podcast days, like that's just integrated in my mind personally. But I was reflecting on how it's impacted our community as a church. Like Pastor Adam was saying, like we have a huge community. It's not like it's a small church. Like
Right.
this is a big church. People are doing neighborhood groups about it. They'll discuss weekly episodes. It's become a service. It's changed the whole way that we do church.
Yeah.
Like had we never had it Beyond the Letter, they would not be Beyond the Letter Q&A nights.
Yeah.
That's just a crazy thought to
we're
have.
talking with,
know?
it's
it's
cool.
It's
Yeah.
really cool. Like it's just a really big testament because what you really plan for, but the way God is really going to use it and the way it's really going to impact people. I think if you have a really strong vision and mission, like that's all that you need, because then the rest will fall into place. I was thinking about just like neighborhood groups and that whole concept. Like you just said, you just strike the thought. Neighborhood groups are kind of one of those things you just go into, you get involved, you get engaged, and you never know the fruit of it. You never know what's going to come out of it. And like, for example, my volleyball group has been going for like 7 years. Well, this guy who's literally been going for the last 7 years never came to church. Just like, I end up seeing him Sunday. And I'm like, what's good, bro? Like, he's like, it's my first Sunday coming. And I've known him. We went to high school together, but he knows what I do. He knows like the church life and never come, never except that one Sunday, gave his life to God. Like, it was a whole thing. And I'm just like, you never know how God's going to use something you just stay faithful with. And your yes, and like how much volume we've added to this thing with hopes that it just reaches more people, amping up the clips to one a day for each podcast. Like, we're just like, why are we doing this? We want to reach more people. We want to cast a wider net to connect people, not just for reach's sake, but to connect people with good ideas or differing ideas.
Yeah. I mean, it's what we always said going into this thing, which like you said, you bring preparation to it mixed with the will of God and the hand of God. And then that's kind of how you have a recipe where it meets some people. They may be preparation, but it's not in the will of God. It's not part of the hand of God. Or there may be people who they have a calling, they have a purpose that's in the will of God or plan of God, but they don't want to do no work to develop it, or get better or be better or whatever it is, or educate themselves or whatever. So you have everything we did, which was the heart to be a front door to faith. There's a lot of people who are in the middle, right? You start a podcast that's Christian. It's so Christian. You have to be saved for at least 3 years to even understand like what they're talking about and who, they're talking about rules and all these things and, all these disciplines that are great. But that's a loud voice, right? That's why a whole category of religion and spirituality exists. And then you open it and it's just all a lot of like Christian celebrities, stuff. So for us, it was like, we're going to put this podcast under lifestyle and leisure. And it's not going to go under religion and spirituality so that it can be exposed to more people on the fringes of their faith, fringes of life. And it's going to be a front door to faith. So we're going to have enough conversations where a person who's like never even thought about going to church before can hear the level of conversation we're having and be like, oh, well, wow, I like what they're saying. I don't like what they're saying, but I see where they're coming from. All those things are like, I even see someone in that room disagree. So there's not a choir in that room. Yeah. Everyone's not just amening each other. There's perspective and disagreement, which people, we need more of that today. Yeah. So then it's like that aspect exists. And then as people are there, then they start to open up their heart. And then as they open up their heart, then the Lord he did it all from the beginning, but this is part of his plan to then just enter people's life and encourage them to start looking at what a relationship with Jesus looks like, what faith looks like, what building habits for your family to go to church look like. Yeah. I had someone that I go to high school with message me not too long ago, and we hadn't talked in 10 years. He's like, I listen to your podcast all the time. Our family's going to church for the first time this Sunday. Wow. And we hadn't talked in like 14 years. Follow each other on Instagram and stuff, aware of where we're at in life, but no conversations here and there. And so like that was really dope that if I just put sermon clips every week of just me preaching, most people look at that and they go, oh, he's speaking to his specific Christian audience. Where with this stuff, it's kind of people more so, he might be talking to me or he's talking to, that person's talking to the world. And so maybe I like it, maybe I don't. If I do like it, I'm going to go a little deeper. So it's just dope that with your friend playing volleyball or whatever it is, friend I went to high school with, that it is meeting people exactly where they're at. Yeah. And we also still go deep at the same time. So that the point is like, and one of the early conversations we had here and there was like, hey, not every episode is going to be for everybody. Right. Yeah. People are going to listen to one show and then not listen to 3 until a new topic, a conversation picks that a person likes. That's really what podcasting is. You don't do podcasting to hope that people listen to every episode, even though some people may, which is
some faithful listeners.
I mean, that's a huge honor if people take weekly time. But for the most part, you're like, if someone listens to us once a month, that's a win because it's a once a month 2-hour conversation that you're having with us.
Right.
So, you know, if you think in a given month, outside of work, who have I had a 2-hour conversation with? You'd probably count on less than one hand.
Right,
For sure.
So if we even get to be part of that in once a month, like that's a win.
That's huge,
Let alone 2 conversations a week, you know, between
Right.
Beyond the Letter and Beyond I Do, and then you know, here in a month or so with Bible Club. You
Right,
know.
exactly. And I think what people really appreciate too, and we've said this on episodes, is like the authenticity of what is said, because we can even, you know, just humbly come and be like, you know what, I was wrong about that, or, you know, I may disagree about what I'm saying right now, maybe in a month after some deeper conversation offline. So I think there's been a couple of times where, you know, we've come on and we're like, well, I did say that last time, but now I feel about it this way.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Like the
We can
Christian
keep it
nightclub.
real. Yeah. Like,
That was
I
a
thought
fun one.
I thought it was going to be a hit. And then like I went and I was like, oh, it's not my crowd. Okay, I probably, you know, but maybe it fits somebody else, which is awesome. But yeah, so just certain things like that. Like we could just be authentic and be like, oh, you know, I changed my mind. Like we can do that. We're human beings, you know.
Yeah.
So, but that's been great.
Well,
too.
everyone, it's, you know, it's not to spend too much on it, but it's been a great episode, and wanted to do kind of somewhat of a short one, just reflecting on the time together with some of the team that helped start it. And so hope everybody has enjoyed so far and what the future will bring. And, you know, we're just excited about what will continue to happen with Bible Club launching and other things, and continuing to bring hopefully some incredible conversations and content your way. And so just look out for whatever comes in the horizon. Appreciate you being part of the family. Appreciate you being part of Beyond the Letter and Beyond I Do, as we celebrate a 2-year and a 1 year, and can't wait to see what the future holds.
Let's go.
Same.
Thanks, everybody.
You gonna shoot this thing up or no?
We're gonna shoot it
You
up.
guys want me to
Try
do
it.
it?
Yeah.
How do you do
Dang,
it?
2-year
on
anniversary.
audio that goes
You have to
crazy.
no, you have to open it. You have to open the
Started
Just
Yeah.
saying, shoot it up on
rip it?
audio. Nobody has no context.
I know.
Oh, sorry.
They,
guys.
they got a confetti little thing
Yeah.
right here.
For
No,
not-
I don't want to
no.
make a mess. I don't want to make a mess. Give me
Okay, we'll keep
anxiety.
it as decor.
All right, everybody. Peace. Thanks.
Bye.